Hey guys, and welcome to your Fine Arts for week 21. We're still talking about the orchestra, and today we are moving from the classical era into the romantic era of music, which in my book here, The Story of the Orchestra, which I highly recommend if you haven't read or seen it, it calls the romantic era classical music with more pizzazz and oomph. And so that's the era that we're moving into, and today we're talking about one of the most famous composers from that era, and one of the most famous composers of all time, Johannes Brahms. So we'll talk about Brahms in just a second, but to introduce the Romantic era, so we moved from the classical era that made music more simple and more available to the average person like me and you, the shopkeepers, the bookstore owners, just the normal people of that day. Now we're moving into the Romantic era, which builds on the classical era and adds a lot of passion and drama and storytelling to its music. So that's what's important about the Romantic era. One other thing that specifically pertains to the orchestra is that during the Romantic era, a composer named Carl Maria von Weber designed the orchestra seating arrangement, the one that we still see today when we see an orchestra perform. And so here's a picture of how Weber designed it. You can see the conductor here. During the Romantic era also was the time when they started using this little baton to lead the orchestra. Before, conductors sat at the piano or kept rhythm different ways, and so during this time they decided, let's put the conductor in the middle and give him a baton that he can keep time with. Then you can see kind of where all the instruments were then, and for the most part they've stayed the same even to our day and time. So that's a little bit about the Romantic era, and now let's talk about Brahms. Nora's here cheering me on, helping me feel a little bit better about doing this. Okay, so Johannes Brahms, he was one of the greatest composers of classical music of all time. He came after Bach and Beethoven, and he was the third B that completed the three great Bs. So we had Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms, and these are known as some of the greatest composers of all time, and the name was coined for them, the three great Bs. So Brahms was born in Germany, and he was a musical child prodigy. So that's an encouragement to you kids. Practice your music. You never know where it could take you. His father was a bass player, and so he immediately recognized Brahms' talent and ability. But it was still a little while later before Brahms was discovered as and became a famous composer. When he was 20, he met Robert Schumann, and when Schumann heard Brahms' music, he said, "This is amazing." But then it was still another 20 years before Brahms released his first symphony, the First Symphony. That's when he became famous after that. But he spent a lot of time, he wrote a lot of music that he threw out and never brought to the public. So his first symphony he published by the time he was 41. And so Brahms' music, there was a lot of harmony, and it was sometimes considered harsh. They didn't really, for that time, it was just different than anything they had heard before. But he was an amazing composer, and today you are going to be listening to Brahms' Symphony No. 4, the third movement. And so Miss Jessica has given us this wonderful, let me show you a picture of Brahms so you can see him. He had a nice beard and some scraggly hair. So that's Brahms. Here's a cartoon picture from The Story of the Orchestra. I like their pictures that they do. You can see him here sitting at the piano with his long hair and his beard, and he's saying, "If only Beethoven could see me now." Brahms was notorious for comparing himself to other composers and feeling kind of like he was in the shadows, but he kept working and he became very famous. So Miss Jessica has given us this awesome listening guide, and I'm going to hold it up for you. So moms, in a second you can take a screenshot, and I think it's on CC Connected also. So what you do is, as you are listening to Brahms' Fourth Symphony today, the third movement, you can follow along with his listening guide. You can see where different instruments come in, where they go out, where the music swells and wanes. There's crescendos, times when the whole orchestra is playing together. So pay attention to those. And remember, as you're listening, that the goal for studying the orchestra or one of the goals for studying the orchestra and these composers is active listening. So as you're listening to the music today, to Brahms Symphony No. 4, third movement, try to keep your hands and your bodies still and focus on active listening with your ears, okay? And the best way to do that is by keeping your body still. Use your stuffed animal or your blanket, just like we've done in class. So here's the listening guide. And moms, if you want to screenshot this, you can. It's, again, from CC Connected, and you can just follow the arrows as they go here with the music, okay? It tells you the time, where you're at in the symphony, and what's going on. And I hope that's really helpful for Fine Arts for week 21. I hope you guys are having a great week at home, and I hope you're encouraged as you study the orchestra and just the beauty that God gave us in music and in these composers who He gifted in that way. So it's really awesome to me. I love listening to classical music and just hearing all the different ways and all the different types of music that can be just in one symphony, third movement. All right, y'all have a good day, and we will see you soon.